Welcome back to the Living Transplant podcast. In September 2022, we launched Great Actions Leave a Mark, a national multi-year public awareness campaign about living organ donation and transplantation. It has images and videos of living kidney and liver donors and recipients across Canada. In the coming weeks, you will hear stories from Great Actions models about their journey with living organ donation. Today, I welcomed Jaime onto the podcast, a remarkable man and kidney transplant recipient whose partner donated a kidney to him. Please enjoy. Welcome back. I am incredibly grateful to introduce you to Jaime, who is a Great Actions model and is a kidney transplant recipient himself. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Candace.
Awesome. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
That's a question that's a bit like, how long is a piece of string? But I think the most important thing I could say is that I'm a partner, I'm a dad, and I'm a grandfather. And those are the reasons that all of this was so incredibly important to
me. Amazing. So you received a living kidney transplant. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey on how you became a transplant recipient?
Well, as people who are living with kidney disease know, it's a one-way trip to a bad place. And at the end of the day, there are basically three doors. Do nothing, and you know what happens, you're going to die. And the second one is dialysis, which for a lot of people is the option that they have to have, but it's pretty challenging. And then the third option is to get a transplant. Of course, if you have to wait for one from a cadaver, it's an awfully long wait. And if you're really lucky and you win the lottery of life, you can get one from a living donor. And I won the lottery of life. I'll never buy another lottery ticket again. When I think about it, I think other than standing in front of somebody who is shooting someone and taking a bullet for another human being, I don't think there's a greater gift that you can give than being a living donor. I sort of don't like the fact that it's the advertising slogan, the gift of life, because in some ways, I think it trivializes what actually is the gift of life. Today, I have a life that I couldn't even imagine. To imagine something, you have to be, or to dream of something, you have to be able to imagine it. And I couldn't even imagine my life today.
That's beautiful. You were posed with these three options of these doors that you could walk through for your kidney diagnosis. And you were able to get a living kidney transplant. Can you tell me, how did you find a donor, or did a donor come forward for you?
Sure. So when you're at end stage kidney disease and you go every 3 months, and they talk to you about dialysis and transplant, and of course you ignore them. Sort of about like going to the doctor and they ask you how much you drink, you immediately cut it in half, right, or more perhaps. And so I ignored them for a long time because I didn't really want to confront it. And the doctor came to see me, who's become a great friend, and just said, look, enough of this. You've got to get on. It's going to take a long time to find a donor. Find one that's a match, who's able, because people always talk about the match, but they forget that's only the small part. Then the donor has to be healthy enough to be able to give you the kidney, right? So right. As people now know who've been through this process, like a lot of people who want to give their kidney, who match, get ruled out because they have all kinds of other issues which preclude them from giving their kidney. I was at home that night, and my partner asked me how it went with the doctor. And I said, well, he really read me the riot act, like I got to get on with this transplant thing. And the next day, without me even knowing it, he called the hospital and he enrolled in the program, and we were a match. And not only were we a match, he was a qualified donor. I remember when I got the news, I was on a flight to Calgary, and they were supposed to have to turn off your phone and pay attention to the thing. And I could see it was my office calling. So I quickly texted, can't talk, about to take off. And they text back, you're a match.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So he's the hero in all of this, of course, right? And those people that do it are just think about it, right? What a living donor does. Now, he'll tell you but he's tired of people telling him he's a hero. He's saying, well, what other bloody choice was I going to make? And he calls it a vacation with mild discomfort. So that's for anybody who's thinking of being a donor. His advice is it's a vacation with mild discomfort.
Wow. You were an incredible match, and the surgery was a success. How are you two doing now?
Yeah, but maybe just before we get to that, just for people going through the journey, it's very stressful because there are so many tests that the donor has to go through. I mean, the process is so amazing. It's so ethical. It's so careful. They take such good care of the donor. But every one of these tests is a gating test. It's not like pass 7 out of 10. You have to, I don't even know how many there are, but if there's 10 or 12, but you have to pass every single bloody one of them. And if you fail one, you get kicked out. And so it's a stressful process because, well, you have to have a full body MRI. Okay, we passed that. Then you have to have okay, we passed that. Then we have to do something else. So it really is a long process, not long process because you have to wait for anything. Really, there was no waiting. It was a very efficient process. It is a stressful process for people to go through, knowing that any one of these things can be the end of the road. And we know that it's a very tiny percent of people who actually match their donor and their donor is qualified to be one. Today, we're both doing fantastically well. You know, he is completely back to health. His was done laparoscopically, so he's got a very small incision. And unless you took an X-ray, there was no way to know he only has one kidney. The blood test won't tell you, an examination won't tell you. He is back to complete health and functioning. For me, I have a feeling of well-being of which I have no memory. So I just think about that for a second. I can't ever remember feeling as well as I do. It's been, we throw around the term miracle, right? It has been an absolute miracle. It's been beyond astonishing. I was very lucky. I got one of the best results my surgeon has ever seen. Not everybody has that luck. But today I can't even, I obviously have never had a baby, but you know what women say, they forget all the pain. Otherwise, everybody would only have one baby. I feel a little bit like that. I don't even remember any of the discomfort or anything. I mean, I sort of remember it, but that's all sort of well in the rear view mirror.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with you. There hasn't been a moment where I can even remember what it felt like prior to the life that we have now. I'm 13 years post, and I wake up in the morning and I'm able to go about my day like other people can now, rather than wanting to take a nap an hour or two after being awake and trying to punch through your day to get things going. It's amazing. You're right. It's a true miracle that these people in our lives are able to do this for us.
I think one of the things that people who live with end-stage kidney disease, because the progression is slow over time, you don't realize how much you accommodate, right? How many things you don't do. Or the other day, for example, there's one blood test people will know that can only be done at the hospital. It's a bit of a nuisance, but again, small price. And I walked from my office to the hospital, got the blood test, and walked back to the office. And I was sitting at my desk about an hour and a half later, and I thought to myself, I just walked to the hospital back. Well, I would have taken a taxi before.
Right.
Or if I had walked, I know where every bench is.
Right.
And I would have stopped along the way, and I would have looked like I was just doing email, which I was doing, but I was doing it because I couldn't walk that far. And now I go to bed at 11 o'clock. I wake up like most men my age once to go to the bathroom, and then I'm up at 6 a.m, no problem. My memory, acuity, recall, concentration, all massively improved. My physicality, enjoyment of life, quality of life, every single indicator. You know the kids' song, the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone's connected to the whatever?
Yes.
It actually turns out to be true. And it turns out when you got crappy blood that's not clean running through your body, nothing is working the way it's supposed to. And when that gets fixed, it's astonishing, the result. And as you say, like, I used to think it was normal to have a nap. Like, I used to say, oh, I was proud to be able to take a nap in the afternoon. Well, yeah, but I had to take a nap in the afternoon. I have not had a nap like since, basically.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing all of the things that we normalize because we have to normalize them because we're going through them every single day. But then the shock of knowing of what could be and what we are in now, it's remarkable, the energy and even the color in our face. Like one of the first things people said to me post-transplant was, oh my gosh, you're pink. Like you're not
Yeah.
gray anymore. You're pink and your eyes are bright and you look better than you've ever looked in your life, even though I was probably hooked up to IV and had a gown on from the hospital.
It's interesting you say that, Candice, because people see I lost a lot of weight. So that's part of it. People say, oh, you look great because I lost 100 pounds, 115 thanks to the transplant. So that tops it up to 115. So people say, oh, you look better because you've lost weight. But everyone says the same thing. Like you look better from the inside, right? They express it like you have a glow, you've got color, your eyes. And so people all say the same thing. But you talk about living with end-stage kidney disease, and it was really hit home to me when my partner, who was my donor, of course, said to me in his recovery, because of course it induces that in him for a while. He says, he's had a mild version of what I lived with. He says, I have no idea how you got through a day. Like he says, it's like crazy what you put up, what you were like. He had no even inclination of what it was. And for me, it was just, that's what life was like, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was sluggish and slow, and you had to get through a day. Like it wasn't exciting to have all of these things happening and the ability to do all of these things. It was almost like tasks, right? That we had to complete to get through to the next time we could sleep, almost is how I felt. Yeah. Yeah. So with all of this that you have been through together and your own journeys separately as well, we approached you and asked you to be part of our Great Actions campaign. Why did you decide to say yes?
Well, I think the answer is, how could you possibly say no? I think I have a gift that can never be repaid. There's just no possible way. I have so many people to be grateful for. Years and years ago, who messed around in a lab to figure out how to do it. The surgeons who understood where to put the new kidney and figured that out. The people who invented the pharmaceuticals, of course, because without the anti-rejection drugs, none of this is even possible. OHIP for paying for something that is unimaginably expensive. On and on. Like, I mean, we would run out of time. So I think for me, it was just a way of saying, small way of the many ways I hope to be able to say thank you for the gift that I have. It's amazing. And I think the campaign is very powerful, and I think you've done an amazing job. So I think the answer really is, how could you say no?
Amazing. And yeah, it's kind of become its own campaign. It's kind of gone where it wants to. And I'm blown away by how many people have shared their stories so openly and been so vulnerable with it. And I think we hear time and time again that it's so important to share what people have gone through, to show other people the other side of transplant and let people know what can be post-transplant and give people hope, and also kind of take some of that fear out of it.
When I went into my surgery, my blood pressure was normal. And I was able to get to a place of peace, contentment, state of serenity. And if I can help give that to somebody else, that I think is something I would really hope to do. Look, it's not pleasant. First of all, there's the indignity of it, and whatever. And are things that are not nice. at the end of the day, it is such a small price to pay. It's nothing. It's really nothing to what you get. And all the anxiety and the worry and everything, I would tell people just, you're in great hands. The surgeons know what they're doing. The transplant nephrologists know what they're doing. They're really good at it. Of course, there's risk. There's always risk when you have that major surgery. And no, it's not a tonsillectomy. And I'm not Pollyanna about it at all, right? It's a big deal. It's a really big, bloody deal. But at the end of it, it's honestly, it's so little for what you get. It's the best value that you're ever going to get in your life. And Paul, my donor, will tell you the same thing. As I said, he calls it a vacation with mild discomfort. He would tell anybody the same thing, not to worry about it for a second. Sure, there's parts of it which aren't great, but in the end, it's really a very reasonable price to pay.
And so you talked a little bit about this through our conversation, but do you have any advice for people who are living with kidney disease, who are either looking for a donor or potentially have a donor, and they're worried about this process and what could be?
Right. So I was lucky that my first person to volunteer was a match. That almost never happened. So the first thing I would say is listen to your doctor, and when that time comes, you have to get on with it, because for all kinds of reasons, people will get knocked out of the process. And it is a very careful process for obvious reasons. They're not ethically going to take a kidney out of somebody that it's not appropriate to do that. So you really do need to get on with it. That's the first thing. I procrastinated way too long. At the end, I had 4% kidney function, so I was about to go on dialysis. And of course, we know if you can avoid dialysis and have it from a living donor, this is the best option. And I almost ran out of time. So I would say to everybody, don't mess around. Get going with it right away. I would think the other thing that I would say is that it's hard to ask people. And again, I didn't have to ask people, but I think people are more generous than you think. I think people are more willing to be helpful if they can. And then the other thing I would say is we over-prepared like crazy. But I believe that in that preparation that you get a good outcome, and that I talked to my family about if things went wrong, for example. We didn't shy away from those things. And so when I went, I think that's part of what contributed to me feeling good. When I went to the hospital, I wasn't anxious. I was looking forward to it. Would have preferred to go holiday somewhere, but I think by being prepared, let me get to that place. So I would say that it's a little bit like an insurance policy. You over prepare, and guess what? You pay the premium, and you hope you don't have to make a claim on it. So one, I would get on with that. I wouldn't mess around. Two, I wouldn't be afraid. I mean, you can't stop people in the street, obviously, and ask them, but I think people will be more generous than you think. Third thing is, I'd say, I make sure that things are prepared. Home care, your affairs, all these different things. I think these are all things that people know about, but that's really all I would do. And I think other than that, people have to go on their own journey, right? And they'll find the thing. But as they go on the journey, everyone wants to know about the journey. How is the journey? Well, you know what? Let's talk about the destination. The journey is fine, but really what we need to focus on is the destination. And the destination is just the most marvelous, wonderful, incredible, amazing place. And whatever the journey was, that's all forgotten now that we live in this fantastic space.
That's amazing. Thank you. That's a beautiful way to put it, for sure.
I guess if there was one takeaway, it's don't be anxious. Don't be worried about it. It will be fine. Sure, there's some pain, but you know what? There's narcotics for that. They'll be your best friend for a while. It's not like this is the first time they're doing this. People say this, the transplant drug, sure. It's like a cocktail. I had one that my hair started to fall out, so I switched to another one. Guess what? My hair all grew back. So there's these little things that'll go along. Sure, recovery is a humbling process. a little setback. One of the things I learned is everyone's going to have a setback along the way. But at the end of the day, just approach it if you can in a good place. And I think if you can get there and not worry about it, go to sleep as well the night before as you do, then you're going to have a fantastic result, and you're going to have a chance to live a life that you couldn't even imagine. And that's pretty special.
It is. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jaime. I really appreciate you joining us and sharing about your beautiful destination that you're in now.
How could I say no to you, Candace?
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for listening to Jaime's story from our Great Actions Leave a Mark campaign. For more information, please visit www.greatactions.ca. If you have your own story you'd like to share, please reach out to us at livingorgandonation@uhn.ca. And don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like our podcast. Thanks for listening.